Good evening and welcome. The October 16th, 2017 Board of Commissioners is now in session. Pastor Glenn McCraney has been kind enough to come and give us the invocation and the Pledge of Allegiance. If you could all rise.
And let us pray. O Lord, you have commanded the light to shine out of the darkness. You call us again to praise your goodness and for us to request the bestowing of your divine favor upon us. We pray for your presence tonight on this meeting. Sometimes as a people we have neglected our responsibilities. We have strained our responsibilities with others. We have failed to take time even to understand ourselves. We pray that you will bring to us as a nation, a state, and a county, and as individuals with clarity and meaning and purpose of life in the midst of these confusing times. Our prayers must include our fellow Americans who are recovering from the devastation of hurricanes and the destruction of their homes by fire. For tonight we are safe from both. Yet brothers and sisters suffer without the safety of a home tonight. We pray especially for our leaders to bind together in a common cause as they meet and deliberate to carry out the duties to which they were elected. Pour out your divine spirit in the hearts of these who serve as our elected county officials. Instill within them the purpose of being served and not serving. May they always feel the awesome presence of the power of your Holy Spirit and be guided by your holy laws. In all these things we pray, amen. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. You may be seated. Thank you, Pastor McCraney. First item this evening is approval of the agenda.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion for approval.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, motion passes unanimously. Next up would be public comment. I've got several people today signed up for public comment. If you would please keep your comments limited to 3 minutes, I would greatly appreciate it. Please pay attention to the lights, the green, the yellow, and the red. And with that, I will call Tamron Kugler.
Hi, good evening. Thank you for having me tonight. I just wanted to take a few minutes to introduce you to a new program that the Tourism Department is getting ready to launch next week. It's our Currituck Hospitality Ambassador Passport. I put one at each of your seats so you can take a look at it. This program was actually the brainchild of Kay Beasley, who is our social media coordinator. And what this is, it's for every resident of Currituck County to have the opportunity to go and visit all the wonderful destinations that our visitors travel so far to see. It's a chance for them to be introduced or reintroduced to some of these destinations. What it is they'll have until September 30th, 2018 to visit these sites, at which time they'll turn in their passport at the Moyock Welcome Center and they'll receive a certificate, a pin, and be entered into a drawing for some great prizes, the grand prize being a week's vacation in Kerala. So that's kind of wonderful, makes it worthwhile. We're going to be distributing these through the schools with our school children. We'll also have them available at our 2 visitor centers in Moyock and Kerala. We'll have some here at the courthouse. We'll also have them at our libraries and senior centers. So I just wanted you to have a chance to look at it. We're really, really excited about it. There are a lot of free places to go to get your stamps. If you do go to a destination where you do have to pay, bring in that receipt showing that you went, and you'll get an additional entry into the drawing. So anyway, thank you so much for having me here tonight, and if you have any questions, let me know.
I do, Tamron. Mm-hmm. Like the water park, it's got a box next to it. In the back, does it have a stamp?
No, it doesn't have a stamp. You check it. You know, if you go there, you can check it. Bring the receipt with you when you turn in your passport, and you get an additional entry.
Okay.
Now, the lighthouse does have an admission, but they have some free climbing days, which we've noted in the passport.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Charlie Copeland. Mr. Copeland, if you could state your name and address for the record when you get up here, please.
Good evening. Thank you. My name is Charlie Copeland, 804 Avalon Avenue, Virginia Beach, Virginia, 2375 Sand Fiddler, Corova Beach. I thank you for your time. Like I said, I sat in on your earlier meeting. I would have the comment, and I appreciate you looking into the lots on Corova Beach where people have vehicles parked. I being one of them, I was cut off from coming through the wildlife refuge years ago when that ended for permanent for other people other than permanent residents. I'm what you call a weekender, I guess. I've had a place there since '71 on Corova Beach. I bought my lot, my wife and I, in '68. When they closed the beach to us, a couple of my friends and I, we went together and we bought a lot on the canal so that we could come by boat from Knott's Island, which we've been doing now since the early '80s. And to hear what's happening with down there now is a concerning effort to me, because I have a vehicle on the lot as well as some of the other owners. And like I said, there's more than one owner of the lot. And when you come up with what you were discussing earlier, I would hope that you would think about some lots are owned by more than one person. And that's all that I would take up your time, is just to say, when you do this, just please consider that there are more than some lots are like mine and my friends. We bought them together to have a place to tie up legally and to keep a vehicle. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Copeland. George Barlow.
Hi there, my name is George Barlow. My address is 1381 Pleasant Ridge Road, Virginia Beach, Virginia, and 2323A Sand Fiddler Road in Corova Beach. My wife and I own 6 pieces of property in Currituck County. We have a home in Knott's Island. We have 5 pieces of property at Corova. And I'm the good-looking one that owns a part of the lot with Charlie. We go over by boat, and I just couldn't imagine that if they took that opportunity away from us for leaving my vehicles all inspected and insured and licensed, that I leave at our lot in Corova. And we come by boat, and we get in the car, our vehicle at Corova, and drive to our home. It's approximately about 2.5 miles. And, you know, guys, look at me. You can't imagine me carrying groceries from that lot on the canal to our house on Sand Fiddler. And we're very concerned about that. We're also a little concerned with what's going on in Knott's Island now with the, we understand that it can no longer be any overnight parking at the public parking lot at Knott's Island. Was that just passed not too long ago?
Yeah, you modified that rule and regulation, but it always had language that it was not supposed to be parking over. It said that language was not new, that had always been in there, in that ordinance.
Well, you know, we own a house right there in the water on Knott's Island, and it's across the street from that parking lot, so it really doesn't concern us if it can be overnight or not. My concern is that I wonder how many people that won't be able to park here will come in and park on our property. So, you know, again, I hope y'all will take all of that in consideration, and I certainly appreciate the time to come up here and speak with y'all. Thank you much.
Thank you, Mr. Barlow. Fran Hamilton.
Good evening. My name is Fran Hamilton. I am a permanent full-time resident of 1244 Fairwinds Lane in Corolla, and I'm here tonight, literally, simply, to listen and learn. What I want to learn about, what I'll be listening for, is new business, Section A, ordinances changes in the code to require tire air pressure for motorized vehicles on the ocean beach. I'm sure you're aware of the fact that I live in the last neighborhood before the four-wheel drive, and the situation of people airing down in our neighborhood is it's very disturbing to the board and to members that are there. So simply, I'm here to listen and learn tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hamilton. Kelly Peters.
Hi, my name is Kelly Peters. My address is 313 South End Road, Knott's Island, North Carolina, 27950. I'm here as a resident of Knott's Island, and the gentleman before me mentioned about their enjoyment of our beach and how they've commuted and have all these vacant lots. Me as a resident, and have been all my life, we've always used, we have the opportunity to go by boat to the beach to enjoy it instead of this horrible traffic. So, of course, the lots, but what's also hasn't been mentioned is I myself did it for a long time, and many other people do. They work from Knott's Island and even, up in Virginia, and they commute to the beach to work. So now with this, with you trying to do the violations with the vehicles, you're also imposing on people's livelihood. I mean, there's commercial fishermen who may also, have a lot just to be able to go and set their nets at the beach. So I'm hoping that you will take all that into consideration as well as not just the enjoyment factor, but there's a lot of other factors that are involved in that. Like I said, I've always been a resident, and so I'm just asking the board to, when you're making these changes with vehicles, not only for the actual vehicles, but some families own them together. So I've heard some talk about the number of vehicles, but there's multiple family members, people that all need a vehicle. So I just hope you take all these factors into consideration when you're speaking of this. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Peters. That's currently all I have signed up for public comment. Is there anyone else that would like to speak this evening? Come on up, sir. If you would, state your name and address for the record.
My name is Wiley Melton. I live at 444 Woodley Road, Knott's Island, North Carolina. Been there for 39 years. I've been using that beach since the 1960s when I lived in Virginia. I've been driving on that beach for the last 16 years since I've owned property at Currituck. I work for Wild Horse Adventure Tours. I've been a tour guide for 11 years over there. If you stop me from parking my vehicle on my property, I'm not going to be able to get to work. I'm a retired carpenter by trade. I do that in the summertime to help supplement my Social Security. I'm up here to say that I think it's wrong that you should stop people from parking on their own property. I pay my taxes. My lot is paid for. I worked hard for this piece of property. There is nothing constitutional about what you are talking about doing, stopping people from parking their vehicles on that property. As long as it's registered and it's legal, they should be able to park on their property if they own it. I understand if they're not registered, you shouldn't be able to park a vehicle. I can understand where you're coming from on that. But if it is legal, it's registered, you're paying your taxes, I see where you have no right to stop people from doing it. That's all I've got to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else that would like to speak this evening? With that, I will close the public comment section.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
if I may, to help some of the folks that got up tonight and spoke, the Board of Commissioners have asked the county staff for folks that have received a letter, a proposed violation of a UDO letter for parking a vehicle on a unimproved lot in Currituck or the four-wheel drive area. The county staff will not be pursuing actions against those particular things. The Board of Commissioners have directed the staff to write language to amend the county UDO to allow vehicles to be parked. We are going to require that those vehicles be registered and licensed, but there will be language coming in front of the Board of Commissioners that will allow folks that have lots there to be able to continue to park vehicles there. I want to thank the folks that come up and spoke tonight. We haven't discussed how many vehicles per lot, But there will be some action taken by the board here real soon to allow that to continue.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Scanlon. Moving on to administrative reports. North Carolina Forest Service Annual Report. Eric Lefevers from Currituck County Rangers is going to come up and give us a presentation this evening.
Good afternoon. First off, I'd like to thank you for taking some time out of your busy schedule tonight
If you can just hold on for a second, we'll let all these folks burrow out of here. Sorry about that.
I didn't realize it was that big.
Wow. Yeah.
Well, maybe it's not as busy as I thought it was. I didn't think I was going to be that boring, but I guess I was.
All right, Mr. Lefevre, thank you for your presentation.
Okay, that was very good. Thank you very much. Anyways, I would like to thank you for giving us some time this evening to talk to you and introduce ourselves and let you know that we're here as a service to you and everyone in this county. My name's Eric Lefevers. I just started here with the Forest Service. It's been, I guess, about a month and a half ago. I have experience before this with the National Park Service, Virginia Department of Forestry, and in private land management. And this is my assistant.
Yep. I'm Aaron Bishop. I started about a month ago, and my background is I did AmeriCorps for 10 months for the Maryland Park Service, and then I did a little bit of fire training with that, so then I applied and I got this job.
Very well.
Congratulations.
And obviously, being here a month, I can't speak too much about what we accomplished last year, but we were able to respond to about 77 fire calls, 27 of which were wildfire responses. And we're working very closely with the volunteer fire departments. That's a resource that we couldn't function without here. And we're very grateful for them and their continued support of us. And I also just want to open it up for questions from the county report that I submitted to you, or any comments for that. You got anything?
Not really a question, but maybe just so people don't know that maybe watching tonight, what is it exactly that you do here in the county, just so that they know? Just
Sure. So the North Carolina Forest Service has 4 main goals: information and education. So we will go out to volunteer fire departments, to schools, and we'll kind of talk about fire safety, forest management, and those kind of things. Fire response. We will respond to forest fires through the 911 call center here. And part of that response is also education to landowners. We provide burning permits. We also take part in forest management. We have a number of management plans that we can write for stewardship and things like that, and to help landowners improve their timber and provide feedback to help improve their stand and improve their ability to make income off of their land. And is that
Wildlife.
and improve wildlife as well. We have a lot of hunters in Currituck County, obviously, and part of the stewardship plans is to improve that land for water quality, which is number 4. We do water quality inspections on timber, and this past year we actually did inspections on 464 acres of land that has possible impact on the water quality in Currituck County.
Thank you.
I've got
Okay.
got another question for you. I know that if it's requested or if you need, there is air support available as well too. How long does it take to get from where it's stationed to our area if needed?
That's correct. So most of our air support comes from Kinston, and after they hit the air, it's about 30 to 45 minutes response time to get here.
Is that by plane, helicopter, boat?
That's by seats, single engine air tankers.
Okay. Okay, thank you. I was just curious what the response was.
The other thing you guys do, which is available to the public, if I'm not mistaken, is chainsaw safety.
Yeah,
and as you know, we have a lot of trees around here. Chainsaws, how hard could they be to use? You go to Home Depot, buy Lowe's, and you're good to go. And I would suggest to folks that operate chainsaws, if you've never been to a chainsaw safety and maintenance course, that this is an outstanding course to go through, because I think most data would suggest that the chainsaw is the most dangerous hand tool that is available to the public. And I think the average number of stitches is like 178. So, and I've been through your course. It's quite good.
Yeah, this past year we had a course for county personnel that we put on as well. So.
I saw a couple things in here that I thought was really unique. Logging inspections. I never knew that they had somebody come out. I always wonder when these trucks come out on the roads and they're out there doing these things. So now I know who I should call if I have any questions, or somebody else, I can direct them right to you.
Exactly.
And the other thing I did see where it says your annual report said there were 51,600 acres of woods in 2007. Do we have anything more current to say how many acres in Currituck we have since then?
I'm currently working on the updated report for that, and I can provide you that information when I get those numbers.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
I enjoyed the reading. It's fantastic. Good to meet you.
Anything else?
Any further questions?
I'm Mike Petruncia, the District Forester out of Elizabeth City, and I just wanted to say thank you for your continued support, and thanks for all you do here in Currituck County. It's a beautiful county, and we're always happy to help and work closely with the fire departments and emergency management, and give us a call if there's anything you need.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on to public hearings. Public hearing and action PB 15-02 Hidden Oaks Use Permit Amendment. Request to amend the use permit to convert 6 single-family dwelling lots to duplex lots for property located in Moyock at the terminus of Inventors Drive on the east side of Currituck Highway, Tax Map 9, Parcel 26B and 26D, Moyock Township. With that, I'll hand it over to Ms. LaCicero, and if Mr. Bissell could come up to get sworn in.
Get on the other side of you.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you. And with that, I'll hand it over to Ms. LaCicero.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The request before you tonight is to amend a use permit for Hidden Oaks, which is a subdivision in the northern part of the Moyock Township. The request, so I'm going to give you a little bit of background information. A 67-lot subdivision, single-family residential subdivision was approved in 2015 in this area. It's just north of the Currituck home and south of the Kemp's property, residential and agriculturally used property to the north. What is before you tonight, the applicant is requesting that 6 of those lots be converted from single-family residential into duplex lots, and that would increase the total the total number of dwelling units from 67 to 73. The total parcel size of this area is 36.5 acres, and it is full service in both the land use plan and the Moyock small area plan. They do have the required open space for this subdivision. So in the request, the number of lots and the amount of open space and the lot coverage limits will remain as previously approved. However, the project density will increase to 2 units per acre from the previously approved 1.81 units per acre. 2 units per acre is the maximum dwelling units for this parcel in this zoning district. And at the time of the development, this development was approved, the 2 units per acre was the allowable density under the rules that were enacted at that point. This area is on water and sewer. These additional houses will add, these additional dwelling units will add additional students. For our elementary school, 1.5 students, our model indicates. For elementary school, just under a half a student for our middle school, and 0.84 students for our high school. And an additional payment in lieu for Parks and Recreation dedication, an additional payment of $2,243 will be needed. So the Technical Review Committee recommends adoption of this use permit as presented. The architectural standards. Oh, I'm sorry. Let me get back. So here's the zoning. It is conditional single family. It was conditionally rezoned and a use permit because it is a major subdivision. It, like I said, came through in 2015. See, to the north is ag land. To the south is Shingle Landing. And is general business to the west, and single family mainland to the east. This is all full service designated in the land use plan and then the Moyock small area plan. So, that's the applicant's presentation. At this point, does the board have any questions for me about this project?
I do. I just want to make sure I'm reading this right. I don't see a date on page 10 here where you're reading from with the 2 units an acre, 73 total units, because if you go to page 18, and again, I have a date on that. That's why I just want to make sure, because there is no date on your page. It talks about 16 lots, not 6 lots. It talks about 2.27 units per acre. And I just want to make sure that that has a date on it of September 14, 2017, that yours is superseding this one.
Right, correct. The original request was for 16 lots to be duplex lots. Mm-hmm. They exceeded the density, and in a sense amended their request for 6 lots to be duplex lots. So that would reduce their number to within the acceptable density of that zoning district.
Thank you. Great.
Any further questions for Ms. LaCicero?
Let me add, I'm sorry, that a community meeting to amend a use permit, it has to go through a process. And a community meeting was held in May of 2017 for this project.
Thank you, Ms. LaCicero. Mr. Bissell?
Yes, sir. Thank you. And I think we have, we do, thank you. I'm not driving this thing very well. As Ms. LaCicero stated, we did have a community meeting, and there were several people there, and there were a couple of concerns that were mentioned. One was density, and how many units were we proposing, and was it going to have an impact on the neighboring community, and so forth. And we really didn't know how many units we were proposing at the time. We thought maybe as much as 25%, but now we're down to 6 units, which is less than 10%, and we think the impact is going to be minimal. There was a concern about whether these should be scattered through the community or in a separate section. And one of the things we decided to do was to go ahead and put them in its own section within this development, which will afford better management for that housing type. There will actually be a separate mini association that will govern the exterior maintenance, the upkeep of the lawns and so forth. So they'll actually probably have a higher degree of maintenance and oversight than will the single-family units in the development. There was a concern about home values, but as you can see, we're proposing a very attractive housing style that will tie in nicely with the architecture and the single-family homes in the area. And there was a concern about whether the homes would be rented or owned, but renting a home doesn't mean it's not going to be maintained. And as I stated, they actually have a higher level of covenant and restriction than will the single-family homes. So we think that we addressed the community concerns. We're offering an alternative housing type that's not presently offered in Moyock and doing it on a limited basis. As I said, it's only 6 lots, 8% of the dwelling units in the area or in the subdivision. It's clustered on that cul-de-sac so that they can be properly operated, maintained. They'll have a dues structure, additional dues that will take care of exterior maintenance and a higher level of responsibility for the association. As I stated, they'll be similar to single-family dwellings, and we'll have an attractive architectural design. We think it's something you ought to consider offering as a housing type that doesn't currently exist. I'd be glad to answer any questions.
The square footage for most of the houses in the neighborhood versus the size of this one combined. I mean, I don't want to see some huge house here that's 6,000 square feet because each one of them are 3,000 next to a 3,000 square foot home. Have you got an idea of roughly what size we're looking?
These would be typically about 1,700 square feet per side, so 3,400 square feet for the total structure. It actually fits within the footprint that's already been designated and within the lot coverage that's already been approved in the stormwater permit.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Mr. Bissell, will these properties be sold separately, or is this rental property?
They would be sold separately. They would actually be a mini condominium association so that each side could be sold as a separate condo or townhouse type unit, but still on one lot.
Any further questions for Mr. Bissell?
Mr. Bissell, have you had anybody, you don't have anyone here tonight to testify how the values for this small carved out piece would compare to the other homes? Do you have that testimony?
These homes are projected to sell for in the mid-200s. And I think the community as a whole was set to be in the 250 to 300 range, so in the same range, lower end of this.
So the single families would be in the mid 200s, and then each one of these will be sold at the same price.
Probably the goal is going to be to sell the single family for closer to 300, but they're still in the same ballpark.
And so there's no homes currently, right? There's nothing been developed at this point, right?
There is a model home under construction.
Okay.
This plat just went to record a few weeks ago.
So any prospective homeowner coming in, as far as home value go, they're gonna assess that when they come in. I'm assuming if we approve this tonight, there's going to be disclosure to the homeowners that there's going to be a condo association or condos within the neighborhood, if you will.
I think that's a fair assumption, yes.
I guess the only question I've got is I sat here and when we approved this in 2015, a nice single-family development, and seeing this change here now, I mean, I'm trying to grasp why you would want to take a cul-de-sac now and just put duplexes in it when you had a nice layout of single-family homes, and then mix it up now. And I mean, just because you wanted them in there now, or?
Just because the developer thinks that there's a market that's not being served. This has been done in other areas and with some success, and there appears to be a market for this here. So, and we think it can be done without adversely impacting the community.
So I'm familiar with the traditional duplex model, which is you have a happy homeowner that owns the unit, owns the house on the lot, and then can rent out one or both. If I understood correctly, you're selling half a duplex?
Well, somebody would have the option of doing that, or the option of just buying one unit, one side.
But the implication to me of a condo association is, I mean, anybody can buy two houses in a neighborhood. I get that, right? And where has this been done successfully? I'm just, I've lived in a duplex before. I mean, I'm just kind of curious how the homeowners association or the condo association.
Well, actually, we've done single-family detached condominiums in Dare County.
And look where it got Dare.
And
just kidding.
Any further questions for Mr. Bissell?
And then the only real difference is that you don't have, a setback from the interior lot line like you would with a single-family condominium lot or townhome lot.
Well, I understood. But I, too, with Commissioner Payment, we don't like change. And I'm kind of curious how this would have played from the get-go. And you don't have pine trees on there. Don't even be trying to show us those. I did notice that you got a 30-inch oak that you're going to take out with the swale lines, right? Because the swales are going to go in between the lots. Is that still the plan?
The plan was to still do the minimum amount of clearing to put that swale in that we can, yes.
Okay, so she gone. Got it. I will say, as a further comment on that, at least there are minimal trees impacted on that section.
Actually, what we're doing is creating that swale by filling beside it and leaving the trees in the middle.
Okay, then we're going to have to have another tree preservation conversation. Sidebar, not here.
Because that was the.
You got to watch Phil.
That was the solution that
we
came up with in negotiating with the staff, because we didn't want to put swales in at all, and.
Watch your fill, or you'll kill them there too. We can talk.
Okay.
Mr. Bissell, I rode through there last night, and the vision that I had of the development that we approved back in 2015. I'm struggling with it not bringing values down, putting a condo association right in the middle of the neighborhood. Like I said, the developer's done a wonderful job with the layout and the way it's coming together, but I'm struggling with the piece that it won't bring the values down to your other homes. I really do. That's probably my biggest concern.
My only thought on it was, and I think Commissioner White kind of addressed that too, these people it's not like this is coming in after the neighborhood's been built out, right? So it's not going to come in as a surprise, assuming that there's full disclosure that, oh, by the way, this section's in here. But I agree. I hear you.
Well, it's the burden of the proof that's on the applicant, and we don't have that.
So maybe that be part of a.
Would certainly be willing to agree to a disclosure condition.
Any further questions for Mr. Bissell? Thank you, Mr. Bissell. With that, I'll open the public hearing. I currently don't have anyone signed up for the public hearing. Is there anyone that would like to speak to this issue? Seeing no one, I'll close the public hearing. And I will open the floor for a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to deny PB 1502 Hidden Oaks application due to the fact that the burden of proof has not been shown that it will not endanger or injure the value of the adjoining and abutting lands. So with that, I will deny this application.
I'll second. Okay.
We have a second from Ms. Etheridge. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, motion passes unanimously. Moving on to old business, consideration of an order approving the use permit for PB 94-49, the Currituck Club. With that, I will hand it over to Ms. LaCicero.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You have in your agenda the order that you directed staff to compile at the end of the use permit hearing with Currituck Club at our last meeting that lasted into the morning hours. There have been, I did make a couple of minor changes, and so you have another edited version at your place. The changes are under page 28 in your packet, or it would be under conditions of approval under I, and B under that I, where we delete a grill and any other similar recreation purposes. We deleted that after revisiting the motion. And we also, under D, we added the conceptual site plan as modified by conditions of this permit. There's two additions that we put in, or sorry, two edits I made after your packet went out. If you could just ensure that we have all the conditions that you all wanted on this conditional use permit are listed here in this order.
So, Ms. Cicero, you under Section D, you said the applicant shall submit a more detailed site plan. Do we have this? Basically, would have to happen before they were allowed to do anything going forward on the property. Is that?
Yes.
I'm not reading that right. Okay. I'm looking through it. I think you pretty much covered everything that was in there. So, So it'd be appropriate for a motion.
Okay, and with that, I'm sorry, I was waiting I saw some people reading still. All of us
Everybody
didn't take
good?
the Evelyn Wood speed reading class here, you know.
Well, I guess I'll make a motion to approve as submitted by staff in the amended version.
I'll second that.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, motion passes unanimously. Moving on to new business, consideration of an ordinance amending Section 10-66 of the Currituck County Code of Ordinance to clarify required tire air pressure for motor vehicles operating in the county's Ocean Beach. And with that, I'll hand it over to Mr. McCree.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, on May 15, 2017, this board adopted an ordinance requiring certain air pressure for motor vehicles operating on the beach. That language that was adopted that night did not capture the intended types of motor vehicles for the requirement of airing down. And so what this ordinance does is to amend that ordinance from May 15th to provide that a motor vehicle may not be operated on the beach or foreshore unless it has a tire pound per square inch, pressure per square inch of 20, if the vehicle has a curb weight of 5,000 pounds or less. And then for anything greater than that, it would be a tire pressure that allows for safe travel and operation of that vehicle. And so we believe that now will capture what was the intended type of motor vehicle and requiring air down of their tires to operate on the beach.
I have a couple questions, if I could. What's the date this would become effective?
It would be effective upon its adoption, unless the board wants to modify the effective date.
I would request that we would modify the effective date. That would give us time to put signage up to let folks know where to air down, where to air up.
I was suggesting that Part 3 of this ordinance that's before you, that this ordinance, that you change the adoption date so and insert a date specific. So it would read, this ordinance is effective on, and then whatever date the board wants to choose.
I would say probably by May 1st would be, is that okay with everybody?
Yeah, I was thinking somewhere in the May.
Okay, sometime in the May timeframe, and that, again, that will allow time, number one, for folks to know it's coming, and we'll be able to put information out on the websites and wherever, and allow folks to know where they're going to be able to air down. A question has come up on a few different occasions, airing up. I do understand we're going to have air up stations. What is your consideration of the law as a requirement for us to provide air up stations?
I don't think there is any requirement for the county to provide air stations. It certainly may do so as convenience or service to the public, but there's no legal requirement to do so.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I also looked into the fact of nitrogen. That was something that was brought to my attention of these cars that now have it. If they air down from the nitrogen, there is no law that says they cannot replace it with the air, with regular air back into the tire, so they would be mixing it.
That's correct. That's correct. I have no further questions.
So then, again, I would suggest that if you're going to adopt this tonight, that Part 3 be modified to read, this ordinance is effective May 1st, 2018.
Okay.
Very good. And with that, I open the floor for a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I'll move to approve with the addition to Part 3 that the ordinance take effect May 1st of 2018.
I second that.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, motion passes unanimously. Moving on, consideration of an ordinance amending the Currituck County Code of Ordinances by adding a section regulating excessive and unsafe digging on the county's ocean beach. And I'll hand it over to Mr. McCree.
Mr. Chairman, as directed by the board, this ordinance is presented to you to consider regulating excavation on the beach. This follows the reports the county has received of some pretty serious type of digging that's occurring on the beach, including we have heard of holes that are head deep and perhaps even the use of dewatering equipment to continue the digging effort. There's been no requirement to date for anyone to fill in these holes. Some of our other local communities, particularly in the Dare County beaches, have adopted ordinances of various requirements and regulation with regard to digging holes and leaving them unfilled on the beach. This is taking one of those communities as a model for recommendation to this board. And so rather than, as some units have done, to say that you can't dig a hole, for example, more than 12 inches deep, this ordinance is a little bit more broad in that it would, first of all, prohibit someone from substantially or permanently altering the contour or the shape of the beach or a sand dune, that a hole could not remain unattended at night for any period of time or during the day for more than 1 hour without restoring the beach to its original condition. It would prohibit the digging of a hole that unreasonably restricts, prevents, or disrupts the passage of public works, emergency, or ocean rescue vehicles or the public. Prohibits the creation of holes that or excavation that's a hazard for those traveling the ocean beach during times of reduced visibility. Creates hazards for endangered and protected species such as turtles. We know turtles come onto the beach at night to nest. Prohibits the creation of holes that has a possibility of collapse of sand upon users of the ocean beach, particularly children. Certainly not in our community, but others we've heard of such tragic events that have occurred. And then to create or dig a hole that otherwise creates an unreasonably dangerous condition for users of the ocean beach. There is an exception that would allow for the county manager under certain circumstances and plans presented by a group or persons organizing some kind of event, such as a sandcastle building contest or something of that nature, to be able to receive a temporary exemption from the requirements of this ordinance, but that would only be in special circumstances approved by the county manager. I've spoken with the Sheriff's Department about this and some other ordinances, particularly those that relate to regulation of the beach. The sheriff did want to indicate a concern that her department has with regard to manpower available to enforce this and perhaps other ordinances on the entirety of our beach from the Dare County line to the Virginia state line. I would indicate to this board that this ordinance does not require, nor does any other require, that only the sheriff and law enforcement enforce them. We also have the ability, and in particular with this ordinance, it falls under Chapter 10, which we have recently amended to provide solely for civil remedies and civil citations. There is the ability of civilian code enforcement officers to enforce these ordinances as well. What that might mean in the future going forward is for this board to perhaps consider during your budgeting process whether there is a need to hire during our more populous months part-time temporary persons, or whether our lifeguards perhaps might need to be considered to be sworn in as code enforcement officers to assist, if that seems to be desirable, with the enforcement of some of these beach-related and beachfront ordinances. That certainly would not mean that they could not call upon, nor does that mean that the sheriff would not respond to those situations where it might be necessary for the code enforcement officer to have them come and keep the peace in any kind of situation that might become escalated. But again, those are other remedies and other ways and means that we can enforce our ordinance without entirely relying upon law enforcement. And I'll be glad to answer any questions the board has about this ordinance.
Thank you, Mr. McCree.
So Mr. Green, so that would mean that our lifeguard services could actually report violations as well then to the proper authority if they see that.
Can report, or like I suggested, and I've seen this in other beach communities where I vacation, where actually you will have part-time temporary employees retained for the summer who are sworn in as code enforcement officers and trained with regard to certain aspects of a local government's ordinances and processes to actually move up and down the beach and to first of all try to educate persons with regard to the ordinance requirements, and then ultimately, if necessary, to issue citations and cause compliance.
So we're going to have to get somebody to do whole patrol.
The whole guy. Any further questions for Mr. McCree? With that, I'll open the floor for a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve the change to the ordinance relative to excessive excavation on the beaches.
I second that.
Mr. Hall seconds that. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, motion passes unanimously. Moving on to consent agenda.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion for approval.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to at least bring out one section in the approval of the minutes. Do I need to do that?
You may. Thank you. Sorry.
Section 1, approval of the minutes on page 47 of the packet. Last meeting, I had a family situation that required me to leave, and I was hoping to return after being here 3.5 hours. I was unable to return. In that, prior to leaving, I asked for a 5-minute recess. Chairman Haney granted that, and I gave him my situation as I've just explained. And again, I did not return. In it, if you read on the second paragraph, I would prefer it would read, a brief recess was called for by Chairman Haney at the request of Commissioner Hall, who advised Chairman Haney that he had to leave due to a family emergency and hoped to return. The meeting was reconvened at 10:02 p.m. Commissioner Hall was not present after the recess. He did not return to the meeting, and no vote to excuse him was requested or taken. I would like that to be installed into paragraph 2 instead of the standing paragraph 2 on page 47.
Mr. Chairman, I made a motion for approval of the consent agenda, and I'd like to leave the minutes as written.
Okay. So you want to
Leave them as written.
As written. Okay. Would I have a second for the motion, a second on the motion to leave the minutes as written? And with that, that motion dies.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to accept the minutes with the amendment as I read.
I would look for a second.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to hear the verbiage on that, the requested rewrite, please.
Yes, a brief recess was called, a brief 5-minute recess was called by Chairman Hayning at the request of Commissioner Hall, who advised Chairman Hayning that he had to leave due to a family emergency and hoped to return. The meeting was reconvened at 10:02 p.m. Commissioner Hall was not present after the recess. He did not return to the meeting, and no vote to excuse him was requested or taken.
So was there any other, I guess the board was in meetings, so there was no other update as to when Commissioner Hall was going to return?
There was no other update. When he left, I was under the impression he was returning, so we did not call for a vote to have him excused.
And there is a section on page 48, the last paragraph, that further goes on to explain, which I'm not asking for any changes.
There's a motion on the floor. Hearing no second, the motion dies. I'll reopen the floor for another motion.
Mr. McCree, can you please refresh me, the purpose of our meeting minutes are what?
Purpose of your meeting minutes are to really memorialize the actions of the board that occurred during the course of the meeting. The minutes are the minutes of the board, so it is up to the board to make a determination as to what language accurately reflects and memorializes the action that took place during the course of that meeting.
Okay, so it's not a transcript.
That's correct.
So technically, you're saying we should have excused him, but we were all under the impression he was coming back.
It would certainly have been appropriate under your rules to have excused Commissioner Hall, and upon that vote having been taken and upon his being excused from the meeting, then under your rules, he would not have thereafter been counted as an affirmative vote for any remaining action that took place during the course of that meeting. Because there was no vote to excuse Commissioner Hall from the meeting, he therefore is shown in the minutes as having voted in the affirmative, and that is the explanatory language in page 48 at the end as to why Commissioner Hall, subject to your rules, is shown as voting in the affirmative for this and other actions that occurred during the remainder of the meeting.
But typically, it's on us as commissioners to ask that we be excused.
It certainly is a good practice. Otherwise, of course, you find yourself counted as a yes vote for a matter that you may not have intended to be voting in the affirmative.
And I did that in good faith.
Well, then, can I ask Commissioner Hall if he'd be as an alternative at the end of that paragraph, just to add that the chairman did not ask for a vote for dismissal, for a vote to dismissal.
All right, got no problem.
I would ask a question from Mr. McCree. Do the minutes capture what happened, in your legal opinion? And the follow-up question to that would be, now that Mr. Hall has given his statement, it is a public record. So that will be available as well in the minutes that we approve in the next meeting. Is that correct?
Well, certainly, assuming that it is our good clerk reports it that way, and of course, there would be the opportunity for a commissioner to ensure that the minutes accurately reflect that.
So it is of record that no vote was called. It will be of record at our next meeting that no vote was called.
Yes.
And that he did ask to be excused, and he did do the right thing.
Yes, I would assume that the minutes of this meeting would reflect the statement that Commissioner Hall has made, explaining his need to leave the meeting the last time you were together. The minutes do, on their face, meet the minimal legal requirements for a set of board minutes.
Okay.
That being said, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that we accept the consent agenda and the minutes as written.
I will second that motion. Any further discussion? Sorry. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
We have 6 yeses and 1 no. With that, motion passes. Moving on to the Commissioner's report. Mr. Hall?
Nothing at this time.
Thank you. Mr. White?
Nothing for me this meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Beaumont?
Did you bring it?
So you go ahead and...
Okay, so I had the pleasure, well, a little bit of history while I digress. So probably 10 years ago, and certainly if I get the dates wrong, please correct me, when we developed the Government Center, one of the casualties of that development was the Boy Scout camping facility that they built and established. And for many years, that was a challenge. I was an assistant scoutmaster for a couple of years. I had boys in the Scouts, and there wasn't really a great place locally that we could go. I know we kicked around over by Veterans Park, and that's just that was a nightmare waiting to happen. And so I was pleased to attend with Commissioner Gilbert the first camporee where every Boy Scout troop in this region went camping in the reopened camping facility over behind the government area. So I didn't get to see it in the daylight, but it seemed pretty nice and muddy and wet and raining, and I was impressed because they did get a bonfire going. So I'm pleased to report that our Scouts now have a safe, accessible place to go camping in Currituck County again.
Outstanding.
That's all I got.
Ms. Etheridge? Mr. Payment?
Nothing tonight, thank you.
Ms. Gilbert?
Well, and just to add on to what Commissioner Beaumont said, the Boy Scouts did present a plaque to Currituck County, and the states presented to Currituck County in appreciation for your dedication to our organization, the Albemarle District Boy Scouts of America 2017. I also want to give a shout out to some Coast Guard members who also came in and helped cut paths through the camp sites. And like Mr. Beaumont said, we saw it in the dark, but they had torches along the paths, and it was a very well done presentation. So I just want to present this to the county and to Mr. Scanlon to hang up in our wall of fame.
Is that where they're going to frame my jacket and put that up?
That thing's
one day, one day, I mean,
it is going to be the curtain. The new pattern is emerging for the curtains.
Outstanding. I do have one thing to add, and I know I'm always tooting the county's horn, and I can't help it. I love it. What a lot of folks see is county commissioners coming and having about an hour meeting or a 7-hour meeting. A lot of what the county doesn't see is what everyone here does. There's commissioners here sitting here tonight that went to 3 different functions in one day. And that really goes to show the dedication that's sitting at this table. And, I'm proud to be a part of it, and I just want to let you all know I appreciate it. Thank you very much. And with that, I'll hand it over to the county manager's report.
Nothing tonight, thank you.
Thank you. With that, I will recess the regular meeting of the Board of Commissioners and enter a special meeting of the Ocean Sands Water and Sewer District Board and hand it over to Mr. Scanlon.
Mr. Chairman, you have in your agenda package a resolution. I know this probably seems like overkill by now, but this is a continuing part, and I believe the last part that we need to bring in front of you is part of the process to get approved funding for the improvements and replacement of the Ocean Sands wastewater plant. We have gone to the LGC. They have approved the borrowing, and now the bank themselves have asked that we pass a resolution, which is in your agenda package. And the resolution is basically authorizing me and the finance director to move forward with closing on the finance of that project to borrow no more than $8 million at an interest rate of 2.45%. We're actually going to borrow $7.5 million, so a little bit less than this, which was based on the bid of that project. And with that, I'll happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Seems like a good interest rate. I wish I could get that.
Any questions for Mr. Scanlon?
No, Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion that we approve the resolution for the Ocean Sands Water Treatment Plant construction.
I'll second it.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, motion passes unanimously. With that, I'll move into closed session pursuant to GS 143-318.11A3 to consult with county attorney in order to preserve county attorney-client privilege. Thank you all for coming this evening.